Hello, my name is Craig Rainey, and I've been in the construction industry for more than 40 years. When homeowners tell me the story of their project, oftentimes it sounds like this. It doesn't have to be that way.
Oh, wise guy, eh?
And most builders would say that. Welcome to Remodeling Wisdom. I'm Craig Rainey. Let's get started. This is numero uno. This is the very first one, and I want to welcome you. This is a brand new podcast, and I've got a little experience, and I've got a couple other episodes out there on different podcasts, but the big thing is this. This particular show is going to address the realities of the remodeling industry and what can happen to you. We all watch HGTV. Heck, I watch it too. It's great entertainment, but it is entertainment. Those are cast actors that are put into an unscripted drama, but the majority of them lack a bunch of on-the-ground, boots-on-the-ground experience. A lot of them do. And this is a show that's going to eliminate the fantasy and eliminate the myth and acquaint you completely with the realities of what's going on in the remodeling and the building industry today in the United States. And it's also going to, as a homeowner, it's going to help you avoid those pitfalls. Just real quick, statistically wise, I don't know if y'all are aware of this or not, but the U.S. construction industry is the largest in the world, $1.3 trillion per year worth of large in the world. It's the biggest. It's also the most unregulated. There are no requirements, licensing, qualifications of any kind to go into the construction industry. As a result, you have $1.3 trillion worth of work out there, and that's a siren song to any entrepreneur that's out there wanting to make a good living. And believe me, I'm one of them. I got started in the construction industry. My great-granddad, my granddad, my dad, then me, and I started off boots on the ground. I started off as an artisan. I was a builder, and back in the day when I got started, we didn't have, well, in my dad's business anyway, we didn't have subcontractors. The employees, of which I was one, we did everything from the foundation all the way to the shingles. Even some electrical and plumbing work. And I could tell you some stories. A couple times I ran electricity into a box of Romex. I was a kid. That was some pretty dangerous stuff. But anyway, the big thing that I want you to know about this podcast is you will always get the straight skinny. You'll always get the truth on this matter. I know that a lot of builders are out there. They've got good reviews. They present well, good website, catchy name. A lot of them even advertise. But they have one thing in common. All construction professionals come from one of three categories. The most prevalent is the artisan who was a subcontractor. I came from that one. The artisan who started off as a laborer, subcontractor, that kind of thing, and they open their own business. Example, a plumber. He's been a plumber. He's worked his way up through apprentice to journeyman to master plumber, able to pull permits, this kind of thing. I said, you know what? I'm going to open my own business. I'm going to do it on my own. So they do. The second one, and this is the second most common, is the salesperson entrepreneur. The salesperson entrepreneur, they get into it. They say, hey, this how hard can it be? I watch HGTV. I've gone to a couple of seminars at Home Depot. I'm pretty handy around the house. So, and some of them aren't even that. They just say, well, I'm really good at sales. I'm good at getting people to sign on the dotted line, and that's what I'm going to do. So they learn enough about the business to convince you that they're knowledgeable. They're very persuasive. They're good with sales, and then you sign on the dotted line. The third one is still prevalent, but there aren't as many. It's a consumer construction company, and that's somebody. And I run into these a lot, especially in the Austin area, which is it's one of the fastest growing industries in the U.S. right now. And it's a husband and wife. Either they bought a house and flipped it, or they bought a house and remodeled it. And they had the builder show up, and they're pulling from the same pool that all of you guys are going to be pulling from. Anyway, so they have somebody come out and they see how the process goes. And it's a crash course when you're doing a remodel, and these folks are in your home and they're building and remodeling, and you see the bad and you see the good. And this couple, what they say is, well, this guy is doing it. It can't be that hard. And it looks to me like as long as you've got subcontractors who know what they're doing, you can do this business. So traditionally, and this is a little bit stereotypical, but the woman does the design and she does a lot of the customer interaction, and then you got the man that handles the production department. What are the qualifications for that? Really about as many qualifications as you have, because you don't have to have any, there's no requirement for you to know anything about the industry to go out and get a website, buy an LLC, put your shingle out, go to work. Well, it hasn't always been that way, but the internet has made everything accessible. And so the industry is accessible to these people. So again, with $1.3 trillion a year worth of business out there, and all these people are getting into it, trying to get a piece of that pie, how do you, the homeowner, protect yourself? Well, I know this, that you the homeowner who's looking at doing a project, you spend a whole lot of time protecting yourself from these people, because innately because loss in this industry is accepted. It's common, and it's very common, and it's accepted. So you go, well, okay, I don't want to be one of those people, but it's closer to 60 to 70% of all projects that start off will not end well for whatever reason. Reviews don't really help you too much, because most companies will just change their name, or maybe they'll hire somebody, or get somebody they know to give them good reviews, and it's pretty easy to get past that. That's not a very accurate hurdle. There's nobody that I know of that's running a project or planning a project. Let me put it this way: there's no homeowner who's planning a project and they're budgeting what they want to do. This is my investment envelope. This is what I want to invest in my project. One of the criteria they never include in that is a human resources division. They don't say, okay, I want to commit $10,000 to vetting these folks. I'm going to look at resumes. I'm going to look at background. I'm going to make phone calls. I'm going to do this, do that. They just don't do it. Incidentally, the reason most of these people are in business in the construction industry, and this is something that it will absolutely, it'll astound you. The majority of these people are unemployable. Either they can't pass a background check, or they have a chemical addiction problem, or more commonly, they just can't show up for work on time, and they don't do well with authoritarian figures. So they just, I don't want to work for somebody, I can't do it. So they don't go to work for them. So they go to work for the only person who will hire them, and that's themselves. Well, being that this, as a homeowner, wanted to put a project together, you don't have this HR department to weed those people out. And most businesses, they spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for HR departments to make sure that those people don't appear in their workforce, and so they don't have to deal with them. Well, contractors, and I'm talking about general contractors, and you, the homeowner, are going to be forced to deal with these people that are too undesirable to get a job anywhere else, or just can't fulfill the requirements it takes, the minimum. So it's important that you have a general contractor that knows the business. More importantly, a general contractor that knows business, because amongst all these builders out here, there's probably not a single business degree in any of them. And if it is, statistically, it's non-existent. So how are they learning to run this business? Well, the chances that you have somebody, first off, who's a contractor that you're looking at hiring to do your work, that actually has experience in the industry to the point that they can manage their trades, is remote. Based on the three we're talking about: artisans, salespeople, and homeowner builders. Those three, it's remote that they know more or as much as their trades do, so they can manage them. The second thing is, if that's remote, the idea that somebody also will be a good business person and be able to run their business, manage a bottom line, be responsible, manage your expectations as a customer, even more remote. So these are the things you have to look out for. And in my business dealings, and I started off as an artisan, and I'll just use myself as an example. When I got started and, went out on my own from my dad's company, and we worked fine together, but I wanted more. I went out and I became a framing cornice subcontractor. So I did rough framing, as it's called in the industry, and I did the exterior trim, the cornice. And that's what I focused on. And at first it was me and two or three guys. We had a crew and we did our work ourselves. And then after that, I branched out. I started recruiting other crews. And then I went from somebody who drove nails and put nail bags on to somebody who was managing other people. And I was working for builders exclusively. I was subcontracting their framing on new homes, remodel, whatever. Remodels came later. It's a completely different deal than the new construction framer. Anyway, I went from there to where I started doing some remodeling and framing. And the reason I say that, and by the way, framer in the industry, being a framer is just an overall term for pretty much anybody who does woodwork that is not either interior trim or cabinetry. So pretty much any that's a framer. In the remodeling business, they tend to also be demo crews, and they tend to do logistics. There's a lot of things that they do, and a lot of it they're not qualified for. I'll agree with anybody who thinks that, but that is true. But for me, once I got into the remodeling business, it's more complex than new construction because you're dealing with existing structure. You have to evaluate as a designer or a superintendent or a framer. You have to evaluate whether that structure is going to be able to bear the work you're going to do to it. You have to shore up structural beams. You have to, if you're pulling a bearing wall out, you got to make sure you put up temporary walls on each side of that bearing wall, pull it out, insert a beam in, and so forth. There are things you have to do. It's very technical. But in my case, so I became really good at framing. And I grew up in a construction family, so I was reading blueprints when I was 17 years old, but got into it. And what I found is, as a framer, when I got into the remodeling industry specifically, is we had what's called a pre-con. So after the general contractor went to you, the homeowner, and said, okay, he signed on the dotted line, you came to a price, you came to a scope of work that you wanted. And sometimes there are blueprints, sometimes there aren't. It just depends on how big the process is. Or the project is. But anyway, so at that point, they set a pre-construction meeting. And because the framer is also the demo contractor, typically that first meeting is with me, the framer. So I'd walk with the general contractor and the homeowner. We'd walk the job, and, we're making notes. We want to do this. We want to do that. With the homeowner, putting in things like, oh, yeah, and I want an electrical plug here and this kind of thing, because they don't know the process. There's no harm, no foul. And so the first person they have that comes in, they don't know it's a framer. They don't know it's a demo guy. They just know it's a worker. Anyway, so we go through the whole thing. And after we've walked this job, the contractor and I would walk outside. We'd typically go to either his truck or my truck, pull the tailgate down, set the plans on there. He would lean his hands on the tailgate and look at me for a moment and go, okay, Craig, how are we going to build it? I want you to think about that. This is a subcontractor. He does not run a business. He's basically just labor. That's all he does. This contractor who has spent many times weeks or months with this customer to try to work out this design and to work out the scope of work and all this kind of stuff, he has just turned over the entire project to a subcontractor. What's the motivation? The general contractor, his motivation is, hopefully, he wants to manage that customer's expectations. He wants to make sure that what their dream is appears in the final product of this job. What's the contractor's motivation? Well, my motivation was to make sure I got to a draw point so that on Friday I could cover my payroll. That was my main motivation. And so I'm looking at this thing going, okay, so it's going to take me 3 weeks, and I need $8,000 a week to pay my payroll. So I'm at $24,000 right now, and I just know that I need to get a paycheck every week. So how do I get to $8,000 worth of production so I can make that draw? That's how it goes. It's very, very practical. The industry is full of pragmatists when it comes to artisans. Now, a lot of them are, I say that, but a lot of them live in a fantasy world because, and in later episodes we'll cover that, because when you do have subcontractors involved, there's a dynamic between the subcontractor and the contractor that overlaps into the homeowner. And that subcontractor will work you, the homeowner, to try to manipulate that contractor to get what he wants. So, I mean, that's a topic for another day. But the reason I bring this up and I talk about my background is because after I was a subcontractor and I was doing these pre-con meetings, and I found that these builders were turning this job over to me to make decisions and to come up with it, because a lot of them, they don't even use engineers. They just go, well, it looks like it. Now, if you're permitting, engineering is required. There are things that you have to do. I'm in the industry today. I work today in it, and I've got an engineer that I've been I've retained. He and I have been together for 5-6 years, and he's a guy that I have a relationship with him that I could call him at 8 o'clock at night and say, "Hey, what? I've got this span, and I've got this. What do you think I should use as a component on this?" And that's just usually just in passing because I'm trying to bid a job. Because when it finally comes to construction, I will have a set of engineered blueprints, which will have a call out and will specify what component we're using there. But it just gives me an idea. So when I'm bidding a job, I go, okay, well, I need to figure a 14-inch double LVL in this spot and not just, double 2x12, something like that. So anyway, the point is that as I went further into the remodeling business, I found, well, instead of me having this pre-construction meeting and going through all this stuff and getting a piece and having to fight this general contractor for a pittance so I can get this done, because from the moment they sign the contract with you, the homeowner, they're trying to save money. So, they figured, okay, the framing on this is going to be $14,000 material and labor. They're trying to get that down to 12 or 13 so they make that extra money on it. That's how a lot of people approach the business. In future episodes, I'm going to share with you why that's a dangerous business model and why it doesn't work and it's not sustainable. But for me, as I went forward, I decided, well, why don't I cut out the middleman? I know a lot about construction, and I was in sales during the 80s because the construction industry just tanked. And so I thought, well, I need to do something. So I got a commission sales. So I have some sales skill. I could do that. And anyway, so I began my own business as a remodeler. And I had a lot to learn because, like everybody else we're talking about, I did not have a business degree. I didn't know how to manage the bottom line. Most of your trades have no idea how to bid a job. Your plumber is a plumber. That plumber is not an estimator. It's not a takeoff expert. And the bigger the job, the more it scares them. And, so that the higher the price goes. And you have to know something about it as a contractor. So when you're talking to that plumber, you can say, well look, okay, I realize the scope looks big in this job. And then you break it down from there. There are things you do. And again, future episode, this is just an introduction. So when I became a remodeler, I then found that, remodeling is doing pretty well. It's a very stressful business because there are a lot of moving parts. It's a very, very technical industry. Remodeling is very technical, and there aren't that many contractors with the technical ability nor the intellect to do this job effectively. And that's why there's so much graft and there's so much loss and there's so much heartache, so many lawsuits, this kind of thing. I don't know if y'all are aware of this, but in Houston, Texas, which is one of the few cities that still requires licensing. There is no state licensing in the state of Texas. In that city, amongst licensed contractors, licensed and vetted contractors, there are over 4,000 lawsuits, complaints, and grievances filed against those licensed contractors every single year. These are licensed. They went through the vetting process. So think about those folks that aren't regulated. And I'm a proponent of licensing. I really am. I think that I wouldn't want to go to a doctor that doesn't have a license. And I know there's an argument about to be made on that. But just in general, this is your single largest investment in your life is your home, and your life is in this person's hands. Wouldn't you want to know that they're qualified to take on that responsibility? Well, that's key that they are. So when I became a remodeler, I found, what I had learned from these general contractors is that blueprints were almost a second thought. I've built with a sketch on the back of a napkin. That's no lie. I built a $500,000 house when I was a framer, and apparently these folks had a few drinks and drew this thing up and said, "Okay, Craig, build it," and we built it. But it's not a sustainable business model again. But anyway, so I just thought, okay, well, I've got to get into the design piece of this thing. I've got to be able to, because your blueprints are Exhibit A. A design drawing is Exhibit A. You can have a proposal with a word count of War and Peace, and still not say half of what a good, solid construction drawing would say. So I started looking at designers and talking to architects, and it's expensive, and it's also time consuming. And one of the things I learned is that architects have no clue what things cost, because my clients, when I go to them, I back into a job. I don't go with the design up front. I go in with, okay, well, what do you want to invest in this? 150, 200,000, 50,000, whatever it may be. And then what I do is I work with an architect. Now, I'm a designer too. I do both AutoCAD and Chief Architect. Chief Architect is my go-to because it's very robust and very functional, and I can show those really cool things, the 3D walkthroughs and the elevations and everything you see on HGTV. Well, I've got the software that does that, and I've learned to use it. But in those days, I didn't. So I had to incorporate with architects, and I had to get them involved. And it was just a really long process. And when I got them back, a lot of times my clients would, they had 150,000. This happened last few years. Client had 150,000 to put into a remodel, went to an architect, completely cut me out as the builder. When I talked to him again about 6 months later, when the design was done, it was a $280,000 build. And they had to go back and update their funding and so forth. And so I recommend that you pick your builder, a good builder, and let them work with the architect. That way you can build within the budget, because architects do not know what building costs are. If you ask an architect, okay, well, what's the price of a sheet of OSB? Now, by the way, as a footnote, if you ever want to know the state of the lumber business in the United States of America, walk into a Home Depot, walk in the contractor's door, and as soon as you look to the left right there or straight ahead, you're going to see a stack of, looks like plywood with either red or blue edges on it. Look at the price. It should be around $8 and change per sheet. Well, during COVID, it went up to $45 to $48 a sheet. And now we're post-COVID. We're, February of 22, and it's about $10 or $11 a sheet. So we're getting closer. We're getting back, but it's still high. So, but see, an architect, most of them, someone may know OSB, but they won't know what an electrician is going to charge you. They don't know how much tile goes for a square foot on the walls or square foot on the floor. They don't know that. So they're going to have difficulty designing something for you within the budget. That's why your builder who does this every day is important. Architect has a completely unique, very valuable skill set, but like anything, you need to give them guidance on it. And that's what I found as I went on. My architects had to work more closely with me, and we worked on that. As I became bigger, one of the bigger remodeling firms, I found that, and I mean, we were to the tune of $500,000 new business every month. That's, we were getting big and we were going. And I just found that it was arduous. I was not making friends out of my clients, because when a remodeler comes into you and they say, okay, we're going to need 30% down. Now, that's taboo, but I'll just tell you right now, the TV and radio and HGTV can say what they want, but that is standard. In the state of Texas, if a dollar does not exchange hands during a contract signing, it is not a valid contract. So typically it's 30% down. These are to cover initial costs, whether it's design or management. It's to do site work. It's to get dumpsters out there. It's to get that initial drop of material, whatever it may be. But you're given, in the case of a $100,000 contract, you're giving $30,000 to a complete stranger. So anyway, what happens is during that time you get that $30,000, then you don't see those people again for a month, whether they're doing design or weather, whatever. And well, that little red flag goes up, and you say, "Oh man, I gave somebody $30,000, and I mean that's everything I have." I'm not used to giving that kind of money away. So that red flag is, so what is this contractor doing with my money? Are they coming back? Am I going to get ripped off? Did I make a mistake? Did I pick the wrong person? It's really tough to put those flags back down once they come up. So that's something that's really difficult in the remodeling business, and I ran into it. And, found that customers, by the time we got the material together and we got all of our stuff together, we're ready to go, they were frantic, and we talked during, but it doesn't matter. I mean, there's always that late at night when they're laying there, they're thinking about that. So I found that the traditional remodeling business wasn't for me. I didn't want to do it that way. So I changed my business model. I'm not selling my company here, so I'm not going to go into it, but I found an easier way. What that also did is it made me able to share these things with you, because they don't, not only do these secrets not affect my business anymore, I run my business based on this honesty and based on this transparency, easy for me to say, this transparency and this openness. So that's why I'm going to share it with you. So finally, after doing the remodeling business for a few years and switching over to a consulting business model, which I have right now, and with my experience of over 40 years, I thought, well, why don't I share this? And that right there is where we are today. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate you listening for a moment, and I hope this piques your interest, because we're going to have plenty of episodes coming up, and they're going to be germane to what is important to you, the homeowner. I'm also going to, for you do-it-yourselfers, I'm also going to have some tips on that. And, of course, I encourage you to, check out my blog. It's texasbuilderblog.com. You can also get there, gregsbuilderblog.com there. But if you go there, there are a lot of good tips. It's in writing. So, you don't have to listen to, you don't zone out for me droning on. But there's some good DIY tips I'm going to be covering as well, being that I was an artist and I know a whole lot about it. Now, you folks that say you want to repair something in your own house and it's kind of small, I'm going to give you some information on that. And also, like I said on the blog, a lot of that will appear there. But I really want to thank you for taking a moment to spend some time with me. And I hope that you will hit the like button underneath this podcast and subscribe if you can. That would be good. And because I'd love to hear from you. Give me those comments. If you've got a question, I would love to center a podcast around it. And eventually we'll probably have have a call-in aspect of it. We do live podcasts. I've got that. We've got the technology to do it. Just get a few people listening here, because right now I'm talking to dead air, but that's going to change. It always does. And I feel like this is some valuable information. Too much coffee. Anyway, appreciate y'all. Thank you. Bye.